Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Football Talk from the Yorkshire Post, where we'll be discussing some of the latest talking points from the world of football with members of our football writing team. On this week's episode, we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Wobschall, to discuss all of the latest developments affecting our local clubs. Don't forget you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging on to our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, as well as checking out our various Twitter feeds, the main one being at YP Sport. If you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football, or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. And if you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com.
yorkshirepost.co.uk.
As mentioned earlier in the intro, this week we're joined by Chief Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Stuart Rayner, and Football Writer for the Yorkshire Post, Wobschall. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
So, this week we saw Bradford City share the points in their 0-0 draw with Stockport County, followed by a 1-0 defeat when they paid a visit to Crewe Alexandra. Barnsley recorded back-to-back draws in their games against Peterborough and Wigan Athletic. Doncaster Rovers played out a 1-1 draw with Mansfield Town before claiming a blistering 3-0 victory over MK Dons. And it also saw Harrogate Town lose 2-0 against Tranmere Rovers before sharing the points in a 2-2 draw with Morecambe. But first this week, we'll start with the clash between Huddersfield Town and Middlesbrough, which ended in a 2-1 victory for Michael Carrick's men, which was then followed up by a 3-1 defeat at the hands of Coventry City. Now, with Middlesbrough 4 points off the playoff spots and the Terriers 3 points clear of the drop zone, how significant could this result be for both teams, Leon?
Yeah, I think, first of all, you've got to say it was probably a sort of funny sort of Christmas, New Year season for quite a few teams, and I suppose rarely does it go smoothly. You know, for every team at this time of year, you don't get many who win all the games. It was keeping in that theme, it was a strange game at Huddersfield, who they played very well against Middlesbrough. There's been a lot of a few sticks to beat Darren Moore with regarding his team getting the identity, any sort of personality, identity, all that sort of thing. We've seen him. Obviously, they've had a bit of a few teams, in our region. Certainly, Middlesbrough, they've had some big injury issues to deal with. And their approach has been dictated in that by some games. Certainly away from home at the back end of this year, set up to try and frustrate and contain. The Huddersfield fans are wanting, just that evidence of the side's sort of evolution and growth under Moore. And to be fair, they had a good start. A good start to sort of the back-to-back home games by beating Blackburn. Playing, I don't think Blackburn were great, but Huddersfield, by all accounts, were excellent. That was just the tonic, just what was needed, and they played well against Middlesbrough. That identity I spoke about, Josh Caroma, who seems to have a like playing against Middlesbrough, have another good game. Sorba Thomas was the best player on the pitch, and so unlucky he ended up on the losing side. So it was. I've been at a few Huddersfield home games this season. I know Stuart has as well, and once or twice you've seen, the sort of anger afterwards, haven't you? I did the Preston game relatively recently. Things weren't hunky-dory. There's been one or two other games, a Cardiff game sort of springs to my head. Even though Huddersfield lost, and it was a bit of a bizarre finale. I think the sight of the supporters, giving them a standing ovation at the end was heartening. But I suppose on the flip side, you've got to look at the position in the table. As well as they've played in the two home games, they've won just one. They've only won one in 8, and obviously there's teams below Huddersfield that were starting to make the move. More principally Sheffield Wednesday. So, as much as there were sort of two good performances, it is ultimately there's that points aspect as well, and I felt for them in the respect of having a game to start the new year with at Leicester City, who, already looked to be champion-elect. Huddersfield got beaten in that, as most people would suspect. But, at least we are seeing this sort of, identity, personality, which you wanted from Darren Moore's side. But, it's going to be, for quite a few teams in Yorkshire, it's going to be a big month, January. And Huddersfield, it's all about, for me, getting the recruitment right now this month, and the owner, Kevin Nagel, staying true to his promises of bringing in some new players. And it looks like they're going to make a start with a lad from Chelsea, which a lad on the wing on loan. That'll be a nice start, but I think they need a few more to come as well.
Yeah, I mean, we know they've had injury problems. We know these things take time, but we know as well that there isn't much patience in Championship football, particularly when you sat above the relegation zone with teams like Sheffield Wednesday and QPR breathing down your necks and starting to show some form. Darren Moore's had 19 games now, and 19 games isn't much to get an imprint on a side, to say, particularly when you've had a lot of key players. But we've seen managers sack quicker than that. He's only won 3 of those games, so I think January really has to be an acceleration of those trends. As Leon says, this identity is emerging, which is what we needed to see from them. But it's only the starting point of the process. They need some shrewd transfers now. As Leon says, chairman needs to do his side of the bargain, because there really wasn't much financial backing at all for Neil Warnock in the summer because of the circumstances that we've seen at Huddersfield the last few years. I mean, you also can't ignore financial reality, but there really needs to be a kicking on now, a bringing in of some players who can really work within this framework that Darren Moore is creating, and it certainly will need more patience, but there obviously are limits to it. As I say, when other teams below you are really starting to pick up form, and we'll talk a bit about certainly one of those later on, and it is looking ominous for Huddersfield, but they are still the right side of the dotted line. It's not like we're in absolute crisis territory. I think the fans just need to see more, need to be given more to believe in that this is a squad and a manager who can take them to where they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think in fairness to Moore as well, Stuart, you can't really judge a manager, can you, until he's had a bit of a window to work with.
Absolutely.
So he's had all manner of injury issues. I think as well, they obviously lost Nakayama's obviously gone to the Asia Cup as well. I think Headley came up with an issue at Leicester. So things have been unkind for Darren Moore. He's had some untimely blows, but I think this imperative of getting players in sooner rather than later. I think you look at the fixtures they've got as well this month in January. They've got some huge games, haven't they? They've got to play Plymouth at home. At the start of February, they've got a Sheffield Wednesday, which looks a huge 6-pointer. They've got to go to QPR as well. So, they should really be trying to put out all the stops to get some. I know it's not easy. There's things, muddy in the waters. There's obviously the African Cup of Nations and the Asia Cup. That might be complicate things into some clubs letting players out, that sort of thing. But they've just got to try and pull out all the stops to get players in nice and early and integrate. I know Darren Moore is the sort of manager who sort of likes that sort of thing anyway, really working at close quarters on the training ground. Say the fixtures to me just dictate that Huddersfield have got to be brisk out of the blocks this month. And you look at the fixtures a little bit further down the line, look like they've got a tough sort of February start to March. They play quite a few teams, in the top 6 mix. That's the Southampton, Leeds. So I think Moore can probably turn around and say, look, in the 2 home games, I'm creating a bit of an identity, a little bit of a spark. I need some help now. And I think with Middlesbrough, I think they themselves, like Huddersfield, they'll be sort of desperate to do some business in January. They've been massively hit on the injury front. The game against Coventry, obviously they won dramatically at the end against Huddersfield. The game at Coventry, by sort of on New Year's Day, by contrast, looked a little bit of a game too far. They sort of throughout the season they've been sort of strong in the second half of games, and it's sort of flipped around a little bit now. They're sort of looking a little bit of late jaded in some of the second half performances. I think that was certainly the case at Huddersfield, even though they actually won. But it was actually a bit of a bizarre cameo with Howson missing the penalty and then sort of scoring from the resultant corner, and a bit of fortune in the finish as well. But they looked a bit jaded and leggy against a good Coventry side, and they switch attentions to the cup now. But they'll be desperate to get a few players back and also sort of replenish the squad as well, because they've still got their form's been a little bit patchy over the last month or so. But they're still in with a playoff sniff, but they certainly look a little bit light in terms of the forwards. But they'll be looking to address one or two areas and hopefully bring back some encouraging noises with the likes of Hackney, Crooks and Latila, hopefully being back in training and back in contention soon. And a big month for Middlesbrough as it is for Huddersfield, and see one or two other teams we'll talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's all got the feel at the moment this season that it's drifting a bit for Middlesbrough. But the reality of the Championship is they might be in 12th place. The form might have been patchy, but they're only 4 points outside the playoffs. So it's always salvageable for a club in that position with a good January. And we've seen with Middlesbrough and Huddersfield, they've both made good use of the loan market in recent years. I mean, Huddersfield have got this, have built this relationship with Chelsea over the years, where they've been able to tap into some really good youngsters there. Like Darren Moore himself has got a reputation as a player who works well with loan players. So one would hope that they're quite persuasive when it comes to getting top young players in. And likewise, the work that Michael Carrick did last season, particularly with Aston Villa's youngsters, obviously there's a link on the coaching staff there. The work he did, developing the likes of Archer and Ramsey last season, one would hope both of those clubs will have access to some really top young players who can boost their squads. But we've touched on it already. Both of these managers, both of these clubs, I should say, have had significant injury problems this season, and I think sometimes that can be overlooked, and people can just make hasty judgments to change their managers. When actually, if you look at things, there's two good managers there, who've had lots of injury problems, and I accept that other teams in the Championship have had lots of injury problems too. But nevertheless, there's reasons why these clubs have stalled, and if you were to jump into a decision, and I don't think one's close on either of them at the moment in that regard, but if you were to sort of push into that decision, it could be something you regret. I think both of these managers have shown in the past that they're worth persevering with and showing some faith in, and that faith first and foremost needs to come from the chairman finding some funds for them in January, because I say there is the potential for both of those clubs to pick up quite significantly. I mean, even Huddersfield, we talk about the teams creeping up on them, but there is a clump of teams just above Huddersfield where if they could string together, a few back-to-back wins, which is something they really struggle with, but if they could crack that, they could quite quickly move up the table. If they go the other way, they could quite quickly drop. So that's why Leon's right to say January is so important.
Yeah,
I think the fact as well, quickly, Stuart, they both haven't moaned about it, have they? Some managers in the particular situation, would be bemoaning a lot, but fair play to Darren Moore and Michael Carrick. They've just cracked on, haven't they? Really, and Middlesbrough as well. They've had the cup success, as well. So they basically played 5 games in basically a fortnight, which when you sort of got an injury into double figures, it's a sort of brutal schedule, isn't it? And he had to feel for more as well. Going quickly back to the Middlesbrough game, he had four lads on the bench who'd never played for the club, and I think he only had 7 players on the bench in any case, and that just that's a graphic illustration of what he sort of hasn't got to work with as such. And I think anyone who knows football, and really any Huddersfield fan deep down, will just not appreciate that he just needs help, doesn't he? This month, that's the bottom line.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And next we turn to Hull City, who claimed a 3-2 victory over Blackburn Rovers before falling to a 3-1 defeat at the hands of Sheffield Wednesday. Now, with these 2 results, how will Liam Rosenior be feeling about his team's performances? And then turning to Danny Roll's Sheffield Wednesday side, they're just 3 points from safety. And considering where they were prior to this, can they look on the game against Hull City with some pride, Stuart?
They absolutely can. They were excellent that day, and they are really getting ahead of steam. Which what I was saying with regards to Huddersfield, there is a coach who has been given a little bit of time. Let's not overplay it, but a bit of time to find his feet, and has really got things coming together at that football club. Back-to-back wins over Preston and Hull have really, put optimism into Sheffield Wednesday. If I was not just manager of Huddersfield, but if I was caretaker manager of Birmingham or in at Stoke or Plymouth, or even clubs like Swansea and Millwall, I'd be worried about the form Sheffield Wednesday are showing right now. They look like a really good, vibrant outfit. Again, hopefully it applies to any club that's changed manager during the season. They'll want to get players in January who are more suited to their way of playing, and move on those that aren't. I mean, we've already seen John Buckley's loan cancelled to free up a bit of space. So things are very positive for Sheffield Wednesday, and you've got to throw that perspective in when you look at Hull City. But I was going to say Liam Rosenior will be. I spoke to him after the game. Liam Rosenior is frustrated. That's 5 defeats in 8 games now for Hull, and Rosenior will bang the drum about how they should have more than 9 points from those 8 games. They've played well in game X, they played well in game Y, but they are just letting themselves down at key moments, either by not putting teams away with finishing or with sloppy mistakes. In the Sheffield Wednesday game, I mean, Leon talks about it being a game too many for Middlesbrough. That was a game where Hull just didn't turn up, and that was the sort of more worrying part of the equation for them. They're going to be without Jean-Michel Seri now, who everything goes through in that team. He's going to be away for the African Cup of Nations for a month. But one thing you do know with Hull City, we've mentioned it a couple of times with clubs. Will the chairman back the manager in the January transfer market? It's not a question at Hull City. He will. They've already brought in Billy Sharp. There's already work underway to bring in other players. He will get backed. For all that, as I say, it's 5 defeats in 8. They're 1 point outside the playoffs. This is a wobble, and you can't ignore wobbles, but you can make them a lot worse if you get them out of proportion and panic about them. This is a good squad with a good manager who I'm pretty certain will get things right. Well, very confident will get things right if people just hold their nerve. And I think there's a lot of goodwill towards Liam Rosenior, from the whole terraces. So that will certainly work in his favour. I say there's a chairman who believes in him. It's a concerning time for Hull City, but no more than that. It's a very good time for Sheffield Wednesday at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with all that. I think that there needs to be some perspective in terms of where Hull have come from. Sort of this time last year, they were just showing signs of turning it around a little bit after being in the relegation match for most of the first half of of last season, and the direction of travel is an upward one. And you look at the points, 39 from 25, 26. They're on course to sort of be around that sort of early to mid 70s sort of haul of points, which gets you into playoff consideration at the end of the season. The one of a clutch of teams. We've mentioned Middlesbrough. It looks to be looking at the table. The top four seem to be away. It could be just two spots. Fifth and sixth for a string of teams. It could revolve around who amongst that clutchy teams finishes the strongest, who has the best January. And Stuart rightly said it's about part of the package is holding your nerve, isn't it? Whether that's in games, in the market. Hull mentioned about Middlesbrough as well. They should be attractive clubs to join, along with some of the others. To be fair, like the Coventry's of this world. And they're having a little bit of a bump. Obviously, 5 defeats in 8. I think they probably, being a defender, the concern for Messini would probably be some of the sort of goals they've conceded away from home. I think they've had a few 2s and 3s, haven't they? Obviously, three at Sheffield Wednesday. I think they had a couple at QPR, and they're struggling for a bit of defensive solidity away from home. One or two, as you get at this time of year, one or two other factors as well. There's players going off to the African Cup of Nations, 1 or 2 injuries. Obviously, for Philippines, a big one. He's been a big player, but Stuart's right to say there's no need to panic there. They're in the wider context of the season, they're having to be in the playoff mix is tribute to what Rossini's done, and they're still sort of on message for me. I mean, just quickly on Sheffield Wednesday, what a remarkable story that's brewing there. One of the sort of EFL tales of the season, really, under Danny Rowe. I mean, you look at them, it was just a perfect storm, wasn't it? In the first sort of quarter of the season, on and off the pitch, there was all manner of acrimony in the stands. Obviously there's still the ongoing issues with the ownership of Chancery, but against that backdrop, and his first job in senior management as well. I know he's been a number 2 for some, very high profile names. What a sort of story that Danny Rowe's carving out. Not just getting, he's plunged into a championship season, one of the toughest divisions in Europe. He's got a side ship shape in double quick time. A team who took 3 points from the first 11 games. It wasn't just bad. It was embarrassing. And I think that's not just himself. I think his coaching staff as well deserve a big pat on the back. They've obviously got everybody together on a daily basis at Middlewood. Totally change the vibe, as well as changing the sort of tactical outlook of the team. There's an intensity from what I've seen to the way they're playing. And was it 19 points from the last 45, and they've had some sort of big wins over December and to start the new year. And it's almost at the minute, it's just got huge momentum there. It's almost if it's just sort of destined to be. I suppose the one thing that they'll just have to stop getting, or just a little bit of a warning not to get too ahead of themselves, because it's probably, it is the sort of season where, you do. I think all teams at the bottom do get setbacks. They're doing tremendously well at the minute, Wednesday, but they've just got to remain focused and on course. And they've got every chance, but to be 3 points just to drift the safety at this stage of the season, given where they were in mid autumn, is incredible. And as Stuart said, they'll be one of a number of clubs looking to recruit and add to what they've got in January. I think that comes at a good time. But it's amazing what Rom's done there. Hats off to him, especially given the fact it's his first season on his own in English football.
Yeah, and a word for the fans as well, because Rowe lost 5 of his first six games, but the fans looked beyond that and could actually see what was developing. sometimes people talk patronisingly about, they're an intelligent fan base or this and that. Well, Sheffield Wednesday fans showed there and then that they looked beyond the results. They could see what was developing. Yeah. They're obviously in a difficult time at the moment because, as Leon's alluded to, they want rid of the chairman. But, they're trying to sort of voice their protests in a way that doesn't impact on the team as well. And I think you can see by Sheffield Wednesday's home form and the way they've got behind them, they've struck the right balance, certainly from a footballing perspective in terms of supporting the team, getting behind them when they really need it. And at the moment, they're getting their rewards. There's still some way to go because they gave everyone such a big head start. But you would just feel very confident about life if you were a Sheffield Wednesday fan or a player at the moment. And that confidence is actually really important because it does have an impact. It can snowball and create an atmosphere at Hillsborough in particular, but away games as well, which is very difficult to play against.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Stuart. I think that is part of it. Any team that has a successful survival battle, everybody's in it, aren't they? It sounds a bit of a cliche about a 12-man, but it is true, isn't it? Really,
Yeah,
and he came in at Wednesday. And to be fair, it was sort of getting worse before it got better almost at the start, wasn't it? They had a few defeats. I remember watching the game against Plymouth on iFollow, and Wednesday lost 3-0. But to be fair, it was a little bit flattering on Plymouth. But it was a pretty full away end midweek game deep into autumn. The Sheffield Wednesday support was outstanding that day, and it just seems to be that there's been a realisation in terms of what role has done, even though there was some sort of early defeats. They had something to buy into, didn't they? The supporters, exactly, yeah. And they've been patient, and fair play to them, and they get the reward now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just about numbers turning up. Sheffield Wednesday always get that. Quite a few of our clubs always get big numbers turning away. But sometimes you get the sense that people are turning up just out of a sense of duty and not believing. This time, as you say, they've seen something to really believe in. You talked about identity with Huddersfield. That identity came really quickly at Sheffield Wednesday. Yeah. Exactly, and supporters have fed off that, and I can only hope that it gets its full reward because they certainly deserve it. Everything the Sheffield Wednesday supporters have gone through, but they really have played their part this season.
And our attention now turns to Leeds United, who bounced back from consecutive away defeats with a comfortable 3-0 victory over Birmingham City, with goals from Patrick Bamford, who claimed his first start since May, Dan James and Crescencio Somerville, which brings them to within 7 points of the top two. Now, how valuable could this be for Daniel Farke's side to start the new year with a win like this, Leon?
I think it was a nice settlement. I mean, with respect to Birmingham, if you were going to choose a game on New Year's Day, given their struggles, and obviously Wayne Rooney he's paid the price for that, 2 wins in 15. A home game against Birmingham wouldn't have been too far away from being top of the list. After a mixed Christmas, it looked decent on paper for Leeds, and so it proved. It was pretty comfortable, all things considered. The sort of constant this season has been that home form. I know there's been one or two too many draws, but the fact that there's the only unbeaten side at home in the Championship this season, that should carry weight, and it's sort of it seems to be buttressing what Leeds are doing. Yeah, it was comfortable win. I had a big call for Parker to bring in Patrick Bamford. It was strange. I know one or two Leeds supporters, and I was sort of messaging them over the weekend, and I sort of said to one that I wouldn't be too surprised if he actually gives Bamford the nod. It could be the right sort of game to obviously start him. He'd had 15 or 16 substitute appearances, and I just thought that it's not been quite running for Joe Perreault at the minute, and there's the amount of games you play over the festive season. Was it 4 games in 10 days? It looked a perfect time to have a look at Bamford, and obviously it justified the call. He got his first goal since since April, and it'll be a big boost for his confidence. It's not gone for him this season so far, and he's had one or two frustrating injury issues, and at the start of a new year as well, psychologically for a player, he's started it with a goal and a start, so that'll be a big fillip for his confidence, and fair play to Daniel Farke. What I do like about him is he's just not prone to panic, is he? And there's a calmness and a quiet authority there. He's been around the block and he's seen it and done it. He's not only got promoted, he's won the league twice. So he's earned the right to be trusted. And it's been a funny one in the respect of some mixed results for Leeds. Obviously lost the back-to-back away games at Preston with the Meslier dismissal. And things went against them a little bit at West Brom. Certainly a couple of penalty calls. Certainly one looked a Stonewall penalty. And it's not doing playing too badly. They're just I think Farker's right. He said you just need to find a little bit of a way of grinding out things a little bit more. Away from home maybe. But I don't think there's a lot fundamentally wrong, to be quite honest. And we speak about this time of year, nothing going smoothly for most teams. Case in point, Ipswich Town, a little bit of they've had a remarkable 2023, and they deserve all the credit that's been given them. But a little chink of light for Leeds and Southampton, who are in very good form. Ipswich they're without a win in 5. Had a few draws in there. They've got one or two injury and suspension issues. I know George Hurst, who I think is a big player for them, going to have a spell on the sidelines. So the gap now between them and Leeds is down to 7 points, and that's doable. So lots of ups and downs to come. But Leeds at least they can spy second place again. Shall we say? And they've actually got a little bit closer to Ipswich over Christmas, despite it not being perfect.
Yeah, I mean, without wanting to pour cold water over it, I don't think the Birmingham game was ever really going to be the test. We know how good Leeds are at home. They've got Peterborough away in the cup next, and Cardiff away, and both the FA Cup and Cardiff are two things that don't mix very well with Leeds United over the last few years. But so that'll be the bigger test. But I'm with Leon. I mean, why would you not trust Daniel Farke to get it right with Daniel Farke's record? It's as simple as that for me. They probably do need to just adjust things ever so slightly away from home. Get maybe a slightly different balance between defence and attack. But that guy knows what he's doing. I'm sure he'll get to the root of it. And as Leon says, you've got to look at the bigger picture. They're actually closer to Ipswich than they were 4 games ago. Yes, Southampton have got their foot on the pedal, but for Leeds to be so close to both of those teams when they're in a slightly ropey spell themselves, you take that all day long. You've just got to be realistic about this. And I do think that they will. I do think that they will get things right. They've got an excellent squad. They've got an excellent manager, and I think Bamford's goal could be really significant, just in terms of. I don't think you can underestimate what it does for the confidence, even if a player who's been around the block as many times as Patrick Bamford, to just get that off your back, and suddenly it makes Leeds' forward options, which were already very good in terms of the wide positions and what have you, but down the middle, even more formidable. We've been saying it a lot about Leeds on this podcast the last few weeks, and you can become a bit of a broken record. But in keeping with what we said about some of the other clubs today, I think they are another that they just need to hold the nerve. And some of the people on social media and things like that you shouldn't really pay much attention to, who've been getting overexcited and calling for Farke to leave, they really need to give their heads a wobble, because you know, you can be distracted by the fact that Leicester and Southampton have had good seasons as well, but to sort of shake off that hangover of relegation is no mean feat in itself. And Leeds go into start 2024 in a pretty healthy position, all things considered.
Yeah, and very good management, wasn't it, from Farke bringing in Bamford as well. I think he just knew the right time, and it's paid a dividend. And couldn't agree more what you said there, Stuart. I mean, there's anyone making noises about Daniel Farke really needs to give the head a shake.
Yeah. And now we look to the Premier League and Sheffield United, who showed a spirited performance in their 2-0 defeat away at Manchester City. This now means that Chris Wilder's side have gone 4 games without a win, and with a visit from West Ham next on the horizon for the Blades, what do they need to do to try and improve their situation, Stuart?
They've just got to keep grinding away, Mark. I mean, the fact of the matter is, they are struggling in this division, because they haven't got the greatest squad. They haven't got masses of money to change things in January. I think, Chris Wilder will try to shuffle the pack. But, if we think back to what we were saying a month ago, I think the brutal reality of it is that Sheffield United just needed to get to a point, first and foremost, where they were losing better, if that doesn't sound too defeatist. This is a team that Leon saw concede 8 to Newcastle United. This is a team that I saw absolutely collapse and concede 5 at Burnley, a Burnley team who hadn't won at home all season. This was a team that lost 5-0 at Arsenal. Manchester City, as you would, totally expect, utterly dominated the possession against Sheffield United. I think they had 82%. I think they made over 1,000 passes. But Sheffield United really defended with great spirit and great skill and limited them to just 4 shots on target. And it's depressing in this league where supposedly everyone can beat everybody, that you can even take moral victories from the fact that you limited to Manchester City to only 4 shots on target and only 2 goals. But that is the reality of where both those 2 clubs are. And Sheffield United just had to show more fight, more organisation, more determination than they did at the very end of Paul Heckingbottom's reign, where I think morale had just been worn down to such an extent that sort of element collapsed. And then they've got to build from there. They've got to try and find results here and there. I mean, West Ham, it's not the best time for them at the moment with Paqueta out injured, for example. Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson seems to be under a lot of pressure now and then. They've got to exploit one of these to pull out an unexpected result. But I think the main thing is they've just got to give Sheffield United supporters a team they can have a bit of pride in. And if you were there at Turf Moor, 4 weeks ago or whatever it was, if you were there for that 3-1 defeat, wasn't it, against Bournemouth? Those were games to make you embarrassed as a Sheffield United fan. At least under Chris Wilder, you can take a bit more pride. It only takes you so far, but it's a step forward from where they were.
I think they've got obviously the perfect manager in that regard, Stuart.
Yes.
Chris Wilder, he knows Sheffield United's DNA. He knows what will resonate with supporters. He knows what they'll tolerate and what they won't tolerate. And, when it boils down, he's a Sheffield United fan as well. He's they're representing the players, representing his club, and he's a savvy manager, and he'll smell out 1,000 paces. Anyone who's attitude and levels of intensity aren't spot on. It's just something he won't tolerate. So they're in the best hands in that regard. And they've just got to somehow make a fight of it. They'll obviously switch focus initially to the FA Cup at Gillingham, and it's pretty low down the list of priorities for Sheffield United. But woe betide any player who doesn't show the right attitude for that one. And you can be absolutely nailed on that Chris Wilder will be watching, and it sounds like he's hopefully going to do a couple of pieces of business hopefully this month. As it sounds like they've lined up Brayton Diaz on loan, and I think he's got the makings of a useful signing. But first and foremost, I think players that are there, that just got to show some pride in the jersey and just give something back, because they've had some bruising episodes so far this season. Stuart's mentioned the Burnleys, obviously the Newcastle one, which was the talk of football, wasn't it? The home game with Bournemouth, and they owe it to the supporters themselves and the manager to put it all on the line in the weeks ahead. If you're going to go down fight.
Exactly. I mean, whether they go down or not isn't entirely in their hands. Whether they go down with a whimper is, and even the last time they went down, it's obviously a low points total, quite a depressing season, but at least they finished strongly under Paul Heckingbottom, and that gave them something to go into next season with. They have to do that again, and say, if everything falls into place and they stay up, well, obviously happy days. But even if they don't, they've got to be wary of next season, and this period's going to be really important for them, because it's almost sort of sneaked up secretly, but there's actually a winter break coming up for Sheffield United. So they've got 3 weeks without a Premier League game. They've obviously got that Gillingham FA Cup tie, but 3 weeks without a Premier League game to really, almost for Chris Wilder to have his pre-season with them, because it's been quite unusual his time in that they've been playing twice a week, whereas by and large clubs at that end of the table in the Premier League only tend to play once a week. So there's not been much training ground time. Now he's really got time to impress his methods, and you can bet your life, as Leon says, he'll be doing that.
Yeah. And I just think quickly, just even further down the line, Stuart, he'll be looking at next season in terms of whatever division they're going to be in, whether it's, they somehow do hold themselves out of trouble or in the Championship. But, he's a manager who's always watching and misses nothing. So, obviously, along with the short to medium term of this season, it's about the longer term of next season, and, who's going to be his plans for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to the summer of 2019 when they came up to the Premier League, all the signings he made then, he said afterwards, were made with half a mind of, will these players do it for me in the Championship if we were to go down? Actually, they finished ninth, but it'll be the same mindset, I think, the players brought in.
And finally for this week, we turn to Stuart for his team of the week before looking to Leon for the player that stood out most for him this past week. Stuart, which team has caught your eye this week?
Well, I've waxed lyrical already about them, so I won't bang on too much about Sheffield Wednesday, but I just don't think you can underestimate the importance of those back-to-back wins. They've got a really useful front three, Gassama, Masaba and Kadamatri, who are really, the two wide lads in particular had a slow start to the season, which is not surprising when you consider A, they were young lads, and B, they never played in England, but they're really starting to come to the fore. Kadamatri is obviously a big talent. There's so much energy in that team. There's a clear idea of what they're doing. I think they've had a really good week. They've got a really good coach. They're in a good place right now. They're my team of the week.
And Leon, who has stood out for you this week?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit left field. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning what's happening at Sheffield Wednesday. Stuart's mentioned Gassama, who's he's one of the players. I mean, I think the good thing about Sheffield Wednesday is just the amount of contributions that are coming from across the squad. You've got your Marvin Johnsons. I know Will Fox missed the game against Hull, but he's another player who's been putting his hand up, and that's been the impressive thing for me. I think a word again for Victor Johansson. I know I mentioned him last week, but what a huge player he is for Rotherham United, and he's in a really rich vein of form, and you just hope for Rotherham's sake that they can keep hold of him this month, because it's nailed on. He's going to have interest in him. He's obviously a Sweden international now as well. But I'm going to go a little bit left field. I'm going to go for Joe Ironside at Doncaster. And look, it's been it's been a pretty rough season for Rovers. I mean, I'd probably give them the kiss of the death at the start of the season, like, tipping them to sort of be in the top three shape. But that's not going to happen now. But I just think he scored 3 goals over the Christmas and New Year period, and okay, it's not yielded. They did get a good win against MK Dons. It's not sort of yielded 3 wins out of 3 or anything like that. But I just think for a side who've really struggled all season for different reasons, they've had it's a common theme, availability problems with injuries and this, that, and the other. And Stuart was right to point to a bit of a culture thing last week as well. I think the fact he's scored 15 goals this season is so far is it's pretty outstanding, really, isn't it? I think, and fair play to him. He got a goal. He got a good surprise point at Mansfield. They were really going strong towards the top of League 2. He scored against MK Dons as well. So yeah, we've not given too many accolades to Doncaster this season, but I think he's been the sort of one sort of reassuring constant for him, and they're certainly going to need him in the new year.
Yeah, I think he only got six goals last season in a struggling Cambridge side. So to come into a struggling Doncaster side and show that sort of form, real big tick in the character box as well as his skill, I think that's an excellent choice.
YorkshirePost.co.uk.
Many thanks to Stuart, Rayner and Leon Wobschall, who will doubtless join us again soon for more discussions on the Yorkshire football scene. But don't forget, you can keep up to date with all the football news across Yorkshire and beyond by logging on to our website at yp.sport@nationalworld.com, or if you search for Yorkshire Post Sport, Yorkshire Post Football or even Sheffield Sport on Facebook, you can find us there as well. If you have any questions for our writers, you can get in touch using those various Twitter or Facebook pages, or email us directly with the subject matter as Football Talk Podcast at yp.sport@nationalworld.com. As ever, many thanks for listening, look after yourselves, and bye for now.